Welcome all of you out tonight, and we'll go ahead and get started with the first on the agenda, approval for minutes for meetings of February 22nd.
I'll make a motion that we approve minutes from the meeting of February 22nd, 2018.
Second.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Okay, we have a couple of conditional use permits for a major home occupation. First one being a plumbing contractor at 1612 West Crestmont Way.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. To introduce the item, Mr. Bangeter, whose home you can see on the map and in your packet here on Crestmont Way, is applying to run a home occupation as a plumbing contractor. Essentially, the home primarily is used for appointment setting, but he does have some small tools that he keeps in his vehicle. And per my conversation with him, doesn't plan on accruing a lot of stuff on site, but likely would have the occasional water heater or water softener or something that would just be within the garage, one or two at a time possibly before they're able to be installed on site. So where the work takes place on site and based on existing conditions and my conversation with him, staff's recommending approval without the need for additional conditions. He is here this evening if you have questions to the Commission.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
No?
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty straightforward. Mr. Bangeter, do you have a question, anything for us?
I don't.
No? Okay.
Great.
All right. I'll move that we grant a conditional use permit for a major home occupation B plumbing contractor for Mr. Jeff Bangeter at 1612 West Crestmont Way.
I second the motion.
Gary, do you want to say?
Aye.
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 Thanks.
Okay, thank you. The second one is for a laser engraving services at 1056 South, 25 West.
Okay, so similar, another home business. Mr. Castillo, who's here on 25 West, you can see on the map not too far from the ponds and the Botanical Center, is hoping to do laser engraving at his home. I didn't know what that was, so in speaking with him and then watching YouTube, it kind of looks like a 3D printer. He gets products from people that they want to personalize and put items on. And essentially it makes about as much noise as a printer, so apparently it's much more expensive equipment than most of the stuff that you and I may have in our homes. So he does not yet have it on site. He's looking to get the approval in place before starting, but anticipates people would likely ship him the items, so they're smaller items, not coming in on freight, but the UPS guy might come with an object once in a while, and then the occasional customer would come to the home as well to select what they want to have engraved, and he would do that from his home. He is here this evening if you'd like to speak with him also about the business. But based on my findings and conversation with him, staff's recommending approval, again, without additional conditions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Raise your hand wherever you are. Hi. Do you have any questions for us?
No?
No? Okay.
Anything? No?
I've had engraving and knew someone who did this before, and I thought it was very cool. So make sure people know about you in Kaysville.
Okay.
I'll make a motion that we grant a conditional use permit for a major home occupation B laser engraving services for Alex Castillo, 1056 South, 25 West.
Second.
Aye.
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 Okay, thank you.
And I really wanted to say laser engraving, but
Okay, we have a public hearing. You want to introduce it?
Okay. Yeah, so I'll give a quick introduction, and just as stated, we'll give the chance for the public to share any comments they have on the item. It's a request to rezone some property, about 4 acres, on the end of Blooming Grove Circle. Currently, the property is zoned A1. It's a light agricultural zoning district. Typically, we see that for some small farming type operation or large residential lots. You can see it there in the middle of a whole bunch of R120 zoning down near the southwest corner of town. The Planning Commission will be familiar with the site. We've been aware that the property owner is interested in further developing this in some fashion or another, so we've discussed flag lots most recently regarding this property. Ultimately, the owners decided that they'd work within the existing ordinances and utilize that to develop the property. So the proposal and the reason for the existing zoning, the owners would like to put a home or two towards the front half of their property, closer to Blooming Grove Circle. The existing home, as you can see, is on the far north half, farthest away from the circle. Currently, the circle is about 300 feet in depth, 350 feet according to my report. So the city has a limitation on how far a cul-de-sac could go back, so it would roughly go 250 feet beyond that, which is enough frontage for, if about 100 feet of frontage is required per home, 1, 2, and then the third lot would be the existing. We don't have an actual plat or proposal in front of us, but just to give you an idea on what might be done with that. No, the proposed zoning, the R1LD district, it's the low-density zone. It's 2 unit per acre type zoning. We see it a little more commonly these days as it's a newer one. So with the 4 acres of property, theoretically just under a strict density calculation, that could allot for as many as 8 units based on the overall size of the property. Again, it would likely be further restricted just by the configuration and access into the property. And the reason for the PRUD overlay is instead of extending the cul-de-sac under a typical public street standard, a 55-foot right-of-way, asphalt curb gutter, sidewalk, and the like, they're hoping to do a private street, still with a cul-de-sac of sorts, back into the property, but we allow for essentially a smaller street, less width and less improvements that tends to be a little bit cheaper to put in, but it would also be something that they'd be required to upkeep and maintain under the PRUD if granted. It is, as a zoning action, a discretionary decision, and so we're looking for, from the Planning Commission, a recommendation to pass along to the City Council. Again, you're looking to decide, is it appropriate for this area? Does it meet the general plan and the intentions and goals of the city? Staff's recommended a couple motions. So after holding the public hearing, if the Planning Commission's comfortable with what would likely happen with the property and the zoning itself, to forward along its recommendation, but also because of the PRUD element, staff recommends it could be appropriate to request for a development agreement specific items so it understands specifically what it would look like, or to further restrain. For example, instead of allowing a full 8 units, you could simply allow 3 or whatever number of homes you determine to be appropriate under those limitations of an agreement. The property owners are not here this evening, but they do have their daughter here to represent them. So beyond that, I think there are probably a few members of the public to give some comment, and I'm happy to take any questions if you have them.
Okay. We'll have any questions for staff? We'll go ahead and open the public hearing.
Dennis Hepworth, 220 West Bear Creek Drive, Kaysville. I don't have any objections to the rezone request. The one objection or concern that I have is the fact that they're requesting an R1LD rezone. I don't have any concerns over the PRUD overlay either. I wonder why they're not requesting an R120 rezone, which is compatible with the surrounding lots. So that's my question and concern, is that why couldn't this same thing be accomplished with an R120 rezone with the PRUD overlay and allow them to accomplish what they need to, but then eliminate the possibility of 12,000 square foot lots. So that's my main concern.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions, or would you step up here, please, and state your name?
So, Savannah Griffin. I'm here for my parents, and one thing that they did tell me was that they are going to be for sure in charge of how everything looks. So
Would you mind speaking into? he
Yeah.
can hear
So they're
you that
not
way.
selling it to the. They're not going to sell it to any construction people. They'll be like controlling how all like the property looks, and everything's gonna have to go through them before anything gets built or sold.
And how does that look? I mean, that's kind of a ambiguous statement, that they're going to control things and whatever. That didn't really address Mr. Hepworth's concern. What exactly, well, can we close the public hearing? I mean, are we going to keep this
Well.
open for a few, or?
Why don't we have her sit back
Oh,
down?
okay, all right, yeah.
And
Well,
then
yeah,
we
why
can
don't you
bring
sit
her
back down, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. We'll keep it open if there's anybody else that would like to say anything. Okay. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and we'll open it up for questions.
Now we can bring her
Now,
back.
would you
All right,
like
yeah.
to come back
All right,
up?
back up.
Okay. And we already
Irene's
know your
going.
name, so you're good.
So
I guess what my concern is with this, so what exactly is the end game? Why the R1LD instead of the R120? Because that's a question that I had too, actually, when I first saw this. So,
okay. So what is the R120?
And I may be able to speak to that a little bit, and please cut in, Savannah, if you will. It was at my recommendation that they consider the R1LD versus the R120. That was originally what she'd come in with on the application. And there may be some willingness to go to that without it drawn up. I suggested that based on the configuration, that it may allow more flexibility in how the lots actually sit. So, yeah, I would imagine if there's angst on that lot size, the property owner themselves wasn't necessarily planning small lots, and there may be some flexibility based on the desires of the commission and ultimately the council to go that route.
Okay.
So I guess ultimately where my concern with this resides is, it's truly, I mean, anytime, in the grand scope of things, anytime you go in and you're doing, any kind of, zoning changes and, rezoning and shifting things around, it just doesn't impact now, it impacts down the road. So, I mean, it's truly unfortunate that your parents aren't here this evening so they can answer questions directly and, not go, nothing against you, but, I mean, not go through you as a conduit to, and maybe I don't know the answer to that and whatever and stuff, So, I mean, I don't know about the rest of the commission here, but I'm going to speak quite frankly that, I mean, I'm going to be honest, I don't really feel comfortable. I have a handful of valid questions and concerns about this, and, without having them present, it's really hard for me to gauge exactly what the intent is and what exactly the idea and the scope of what's happening here is all about, and how we want to move forward on it. So, I guess at the end of the day, that's my concern. That's kind of where I'm at. So.
You probably have some of the same concerns. The R1LD with the PRUD overlay, even if their intent is not to really subdivide it that small, the zoning would allow it if they changed their mind or they sold the property. It goes with it.
Right.
And, looking at the property, the way the house that they're in right now in the back, it really makes it challenging for them to really subdivide it into those smaller lots. The way the house is situated and the way the property boundaries is, the only way they could really do it is if that house was gone.
Right.
But at the same time, Mr. Hepworth has a good question, and I thought the same thing, the R120, it does keep it restricted. I didn't calculate or figure out how the land could lay out on that, and then with the private drive, how that would impact it. But I do have a little bit of concern where the road, it does allow for smaller lot size back in there, and then it could end up with some real weird configurations potentially.
Right.
But
Okay, I know the biggest concern is keeping the property value for my parents. They'll be staying in the back house. And then they had like that concern as well. They want to keep their property value up in with all the rest of the neighborhood and that house as well. So,
Did they have an idea how many homes they might
yes,
put in?
maximum of 3. So even though they could get up to 8, they are doing maximum 3. So 2 to 3, very most.
But,
So- go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, but to echo Commissioner Bullock's statement, though, too, it's not so much maybe not your parents, and maybe they're going to, swear on a stack of Bibles a mile high that we're only going to put 3 in here. But say that changes, say after your parents decide to move out, and then, the zoning stays after they're gone, somebody else comes in and says, well, you know what?
We can squeeze
To hell
5
with
more
that.
in.
We're putting 8 in here, and that's going to be the end of the story. So, and all these other people that live around here, oh well, because the zoning allows it, and that's what we're going to do. So,
Okay, so with the RL20, is that what it was?
R120.
R120, that would make it a little bit more strict so that they did
It
sell
would make it more restrictive. R120, the 20 designates 20,000 foot square lots.
Okay.
So, when you look at subdividing that with 20,000 square foot lots, it's, the footprint of each lot is going to be a lot larger than it would be. The LD is I don't want to say considerably, but it's less restrictive.
Okay.
And it gives more latitude, and it gives more allowance to say, well, you know what, we can just kind of, we can build to the maximum capacity of this 4 acres. So
With the PRUD overlay, Lyle, if I have it correct, it's a blended square footage. So you could have a smaller lot and a bigger lot on the overlay. So you could end up with a small lot, than a big lot, as long as the average fell within that. But with your pointer, how would you, if it was the difference between an R120, if they're looking, that's three homes in addition to their home, so they're talking about a total of 4.
Yeah.
And so I could see the PRUD that allows them. They could keep that back lot, then they could subdivide the front, but it's going to give smaller lots. But then because they're going to be crammed on the front side.
Well, if you're looking at an average of
Yeah, and then the average it works out because
half of,
the back's
half
blended.
an acre, the back is 2.5.
Yeah, you got 2 acres back
right,
there.
that's
So-
gonna,
squeeze everything
you can
else
squeeze
into-
everything else.
Yeah,
into
so
really
it
small
so it
units,
blends
yeah.
in, and that's a concern I have is if they're keeping that back half, all of a sudden you've got a bunch of really small lots with the PRUD overlay.
And they average half an acre
Right.
because that
Yeah.
lot is enormous.
Yeah, so
So
if,
we're
if-
looking at, because you probably don't know the answer to this question, and the city staff probably doesn't either. Where's a proposed boundary line?
Yeah.
Is it at their front porch? Is it down here where the shrub is? Are we,
So they talked about extending, so that, having a private road there and then putting
there where?
a
Here?
private road on the driveway, yes.
Okay.
And then 2 to 3 lots up there.
Oh, where the hell did that come from? Who did that?
All of a sudden,
Andy's
it's
getting
blind.
tricked.
Oh, wow. All right. I like that. That's nice, man.
So that's if there were
So-
2 other homes.
Andy's got the telestrator out.
So now somewhere there has to be one more
so that
house.
this would be an R120.
Right.
I know that my mom did talk
you're
about
not
scale.
Well, yeah, but in
But-
in theory,
But that's 3 in the 4 acres.
But they're talking about putting
4.
3 more, for a total of 4, right?
Including theirs, though.
Including theirs, and then
So they
subdividing
wanna add 2
this
to 3.
3 more times.
So when you see that, those 2, to get another 1 in the
Yeah. I don't know.
So up front is 2 acres in the front.
Okay.
but the lot configuration makes it kind of hard to divide that.
Which is why Lyle said LD may work better.
Yeah, and
Yeah, and I understand why you're doing it, but
Yeah.
Sure.
if they keep this back half, and all of a sudden you're cramming those 3 or 4 into this portion here, I guess if you're 2 acres and you're putting 3 homes in there, it's still decent sized lots, but if they choose not to do it, then all of a sudden they can cram 8.
and
Well,
perhaps
like Stroh was saying,
Yeah.
that may be their intention, but they move next week, and
Yeah.
the guy behind them doesn't share that same intention.
Yeah,
And
Sells
they've just
it to a developer.
opened Pandora's box, and they can do whatever they
Yeah.
want.
Right.
And I think on that sentiment, probably to encourage a route to take, when I spoke with Ms. Griffin prior to the meeting, part of the reason they're not here is a little bit of my fault. I'd given them an original date based on our prior noticing process with the Davis Clipper. and we were able to bump that up faster, and I'd already mailed notices, so they were out of town for tonight. So they were hoping potentially to even have a survey and concept plan here before you as part of that meeting at the later date. So I think they'd be happy. I'd be happy as staff to work with them to get something fixed that you can look at and say yes or no to. And, whether the R1LD or R120 is needed to accomplish that. I don't know if a 19,000 square foot lot's too small or if they all need to be 20 or larger. But it sounds like maybe 20 is the benchmark to work with as we're putting together that
What
that
are
concept.
these over in here? I don't have the zoning map, but what are...
It's an R120 zone, so they're probably 20,000 square foot
All right.
homes.
And I was going to tell Mr. Hepworth that a lot of times we don't see dramatic differences in some being huge and some being extra small. A lot of times that zone gives a little flexibility where some can be just under the 20,000 just because it's the way that the piece of property works better. But it all depends on what the owners want to do, which is why we do like to see a concept plan usually when we want to change a
My
zone.
parents wanted to be here.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and then if we could get the concept that's acceptable to the commission, you're completely legitimate with your concerns on you don't know what happens with the future. But if we do that with a development agreement that runs with the land, so that would be holding them and whoever owns it in the future. So that's probably the route to take.
If we approve this with the development agreement,
Contingent.
we can't specify the number of lots, or can we?
You can through a development agreement. Yeah, you
So
can restrict the
even
number
though
of homes, the
zoning
size of
would
homes.
allow up to 8, we could still specify and say no
Exactly.
more than 3 homes.
And then that was part of the reason, again, it doesn't mean it's right, but for the R1LD is you could still say you could only put one extra home on the
and that
lot.
development agreement
but
goes
maybe
with
it's
the
a
land
19,000
if
square
they were
foot
to
lot.
sell, right? Is
Correct.
it recorded
Yes, it
then,
does.
and it goes with it, so it's...
So we'll,
I don't want to speak for behalf of the commission and stuff, but to have the actual applicants here and be able to talk to them and have maybe some kind of a diagram or some kind of a more concrete answer or a concrete idea of what's exactly going on here and stuff. And
Well, they may not be in agreement with what
Yeah,
that,
but
so-
we would make it an agreement,
Right.
Because me personally, if we can control through a development agreement the number of specified lots in there, and maybe put a minimum size square footage on it, I'm okay with that. But it's kind of hard to do that without seeing how it could configure.
No,
Right.
right, exactly. And I'd
Yeah.
really hate to do that and then say, well, this is what you got, so I hope they're happy.
And it sounds like that's their
you know.
intention, so I
Right.
don't
Yeah.
think they would be opposed to
Right.
And if they were
tabling this
willing
until
to
they
come-
back.
I believe
Would
it
they
would be
be,
based
they'd
on.
be willing, they're willing to come
Yeah.
speak to.
Yeah, in fact,
discuss
they
it.
asked me if they could cancel tonight so they could be here, but I said, I've already sent out mailers.
Okay.
We're not going to cancel a public
All right,
hearing.
okay.
We
So
Well-
wouldn't have to have another public hearing, would we?
they'd
No.
love for you to approve it, but they're happy to come back if,
Okay.
and that's
So
not a
Let's
problem.
do
I think
that.
table it till the next one. So,
So is that, are we good with that?
so
then?
I'll,
All right, go ahead,
It's
Gary.
fine if that sounds good to the owners.
so with this, we need to make a motion, don't we, to table?
Yeah.
So I make a recommendation that we table the rezone 4 acres at 292 West Blooming Grove Circle from A1 light agricultural to the R1 LD low density residential zoning district with the PRUD overlay planned residential unit development for Dana and Josh Griffin.
Second. Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, thank you.
Good job for your parents. Nicely done.
Okay, we have another public hearing and a preliminary and final plat approval for Desiree Complex Condominiums.
Project is down off of Deseret Drive between Boondocks and the Tri-City Nursery. See the property highlighted in yellow there. It's about 7.5 acres. If you've driven past it, you've noticed there's a new building going up in the back, kind of the southeast corner. They intend to build additional buildings on that property. Their generic site plan, well, the plat looks like this. It shows 4 pads. This lot 4 is the one that's currently under construction. Their desire is to be able to sell those buildings off independently once the project's complete. So they'd like to plat it to accommodate that. So each building, generically the footprint would be the lot. The rest would be owned in common, hence the condominium in the title. This all works very well. We've got a site plan from them that came with the first building. Shows good parking, good circulation. The utilities will serve those buildings. This process merely allows them to sell those buildings individually. So with that, the developer is here, and it is public hearing.
Okay.
We'll go there.
We'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Okay, we'll go ahead and close.
Yeah.
We'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Ann, would you like to step up?
My name's Craig Salmon. I actually live in Centerville, Utah, but me and my partner own that property together. We wanted to do it individual building plots, but we own them right now. But potentially, I'm actually building on lot 4 right now, and we don't have any intention of actually selling them. But that could change. You never know. So.
Is this I'm trying to remember the name, Climate? Is this the Climate building?
Yeah, that's right. Climate is going to actually move into building 4, and there's actually 4 suites in that building, and they're taking 3 for the first 2 years, and then the last year, or at the end of year 2, they will take the whole building.
Wow.
That's the plan.
Nice.
And we actually have another company that's going to take one of the suites for 2 years, believe it or not. It's actually Kona Karate.
Oh, yeah.
And which they already in Kaysville, but they want to. And I actually own a building in Centerville that they have a space in Centerville, and that worked out so well for them that they want to take this space with the option at the end of 2 years to move into building 2, a suite in building 2. So it's just kind of some advanced planning.
Yeah.
So we're excited, and Climate is extremely excited. About coming, and it's a neat company that they have, and it's really grown quite well. And he lives one of the I think it's the president lives in Kaysville, just below this area. So they're really excited about coming.
So are you you're going to sell the buildings individually, or are you?
I don't. That's not my plan.
You're
I plan on building and owning them and keep the project going, and the restrictions we have or the buildings will look like this one. The rest of the buildings will be built like this one. And we're not done yet. We got some more architectural features that go on the front of this building and that we're just still working on it. And it's going to look pretty nice. Anyway, we think it looks nice. So it's not going to be a hodgepodge development. It's not going to be somebody comes in has got to follow some restrictive covenants and, to make these buildings look nice and go together, so it's not one building. We're not going to allow steel buildings. There. I mean, it's going to be a nice looking project. Our plan is to make those 4 buildings all look similar. Yeah.
I think your size of them there's a need for that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
We're excited to have that land develop in Kaysville, appropriately.
It's been vacant for
very
years.
exciting.
So
we're excited too.
Great use of the land, and from an economic development standpoint too, it's exciting, and I think it's a good project there.
So are you prepared to do some build outs or something if somebody comes in and?
Yeah, that's the plan.
That's good.
What's your timing?
My partner, like I said, we're doing building 4 now. I think my partner is actually just about ready to submit some plans on building or lot 1, which is exactly the same building as lot 4. And he will. Well, I shouldn't talk to him.
Looks bigger.
What's that?
Is it a little bit larger?
No, it's building 1 or lot 1 and lot 4 are the same exact size buildings.
3 and 4.
Is it 3 and 4? I can't.
Yeah, it's 3 and 4. Yeah, one.
It's hard to see. I'm having a hard time seeing it too. On our paper, it's more clear. Yeah.
We'll call it the northeast corner.
Yeah, those 3 and 4 are the same, and actually 1 and 2 are the same.
Yes.
Oh, I see. I
And 1 and
thought,
2 are larger.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what's
Lot
your,
4 and 3 are 20,000 square foot buildings, and the other ones are about 30,000 square foot.
right.
what's your anticipated timeline for completion on these? Is the market driven based on
Yeah.
pre-leasing?
That's right. But like I said, it's gone better than what we anticipated. Got lot 4 done, and my partner's planning on building on lot 3, hopefully this spring, so.
Any
And,
pre-leases set for that one?
well, he might move his company into it, into 1 or 2 of the spaces.
Nice.
And he does electrical work. He's an electrical contractor. Alder Electric is the name of his company. And so he's thinking of moving his company in there. He's actually currently in Centerville.
Okay.
And my business, what I normally do is we do heating and air conditioning, and it's called Salmon HVAC, and we're in Centerville too. And but I'm not planning on moving I'm actually in another building in Centerville right now that I built and own that one.
You built the Salmon, that's a new construction right off of Legacy, right? Is that the same building?
Yeah, that's my building there.
Right, okay, all right.
Yeah, that's where my office is.
Right, okay. All right.
Not that this matters for tonight, but do you have someone, or how is your marketing going to be to reach out and get your best?
Yeah, we do have Brandon Rollins is his name, and I can't remember the firm, but he has a sign up on the property now. But I actually believe that, and it's happened in Centerville, that once we get people there and they see the development, and then that's kind of drives it.
Bring some more.
People don't have any foresight to say, "Oh, really? You're going to build a building there, right?" They don't. So they can't plan unless they see something, and that's what we just experienced. Climate is actually renting a space from us right now I think I just said that, in Centerville. And they've just have grown out of it, and I don't have any more building for them to take there. So that's what has driven this, is they said, "You build us a building, we'll come up here." So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Great.
It's 2-story, right?
it can be.
Okay.
In the
The one
area
that's
where they
going up.
manufacture and stuff, it's all open, 24 feet up in the air, and
Basically flex buildings then.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Is the one that's close to being done, is it 2-story, or is it just super high?
The front area is 2-story for offices,
Yes.
and then the back area is
Warehousing.
warehouse type stuff. Yeah.
Very nice.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah, it really is. Looks good.
If I may, Madam Chair, just for the record, the only call I've received on this was from someone who saw the agenda and was worried that it saw the word condo, apartment building, dwelling.
Yeah.
We left it on the agenda as such because technically that's what it is, but the zoning itself restricts that type of use, and obviously the plat is very specific to this project.
Good. Thank you.
Motion?
Yep. Please.
I'll move that we grant preliminary and final plat approval for the Deseret Complex condominium subdivision for Skull Development, approximately 450 South Deseret Drive.
Second?
Aye.
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 Aye. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
There's a few other spots in town that need some.
Okay, I guess we need a review of a commercial building design for custom fence.
Okay, yeah, this is a pretty unique one. Usually I get to do this and get to struggle with whether or not they're pretty enough and go through all that wording that we've got here in the report. But the proposed building here for you, just to give a little bit of background, is right off the freeway on the west side, off of 600 West. Kind of a unique industrial-esque area of town. You got the Staker Parsons gravel and concrete mixing there, and you've got other contracting offices throughout. But despite kind of its actual use, it is a general commercial zone. And because of that, it's got tighter architectural requirements than the purple areas on the map, except for the business park because it's got specific covenants. But otherwise, our light industrial zones allow a lot more flexibility in what type of buildings can go there. And so the applicant came in originally with the proposal just to still building. They're hoping to do some expansion, create some new space on site. The next slide, Andy, shows approximately where that building would sit. That's just my quick insertion on it. And having met with them, sat through our ordinances and said, yeah, based on this area, you've got to up the detail on the building to comply with the zoning ordinance. They came back with a set of plans that you have before you. Did quite a few extras to it. I think it probably looks pretty good for the area personally. However, I wasn't able to fit it in with the exact definitions that I would be able to approve at a staff level with the language of the ordinance. However, the ordinance is also pretty specific that the Planning Commission can determine whether or not it meets those requirements. So they're here this evening to talk about the building. If you've got questions about it, I'm happy to go through the ordinance in more detail, but primarily we're looking to see if it has the appropriate design, relief, and roof treatments, and the architectural compatibility is something that we're happy with and that will work for the area. So with that, I'll pass it back to the commission and maybe see if you have any specific questions, and again, let you speak with the applicant regarding the building.
I've got a question on, you mentioned, one of the items you mentioned was roof treatment. Is it because of the pitch? Is it a metal roof versus a single ply EDPM or something, or what?
Yeah, and they could probably speak to the materials on it if you guys would like to come up. So from what I know about it, I think you said it's a 112 pitch on the roof, so it does have a slope to it, as you can see on the bottom elevation. But as far as the material and some of the color, I'll let him speak to that.
So Roger Green, with Roger Green Construction. I'm representing Custom Fence on this project. So basically the building structure itself is a pre-engineered metal building. The roof is a galvalume metal roof, typical metal building roof. And then we've broken up the metal building's texture, the two different colors in the metal building. And then we've got the CMU block all the way around the bottom, 6 feet up. And then we've got those CMU columns at our 25-foot base spacings. That'll be 2 foot wide that would go to the eave height as well, too. Basically, the building, to get probably your perspective on it, it's going to be similar to the Mazda dealership. They got the CMU up so high and then the metal building siding. It's going to be similar to the Mazda dealership in structure of the building and cosmetic look.
So I haven't noticed that that's a metal building. I thought it was
The Mazda?
I thought it was a tiled up.
What's that?
The Mazda building.
No, it's a metal building as well.
It's a metal building, yeah.
I haven't really noticed.
Yeah.
So I guess some of the concern then from staff and with code is the metal building. You've dressed it up. You've made it look nice, but so the metal buildings, general commercial, this will fall under really kind of more of the industrial code.
Yeah, so and that's where this is kind of a unique area. Right? It's almost an industrial area historically and by use. Mm-hmm. The existing building on this very same property, and Andy's actually going in on Google so we can walk the street together. Is a still building without any makeup on it, so to speak. And so here's the Mazda dealership.
Yeah.
I don't know if you just want to scroll up and down the street, and you can see what's in there. We do not have, other than meeting building code and setbacks or things like that, architectural requirements in our light industrial zone.
So when you do go to the Mazda dealership, it's I guess I've never really noticed, but you look at it now, and it is. And then just right next to that's the trailer shop, right?
Yeah, right across the street. Actually, right across the street is...
That's brick, though, isn't it? This, if you didn't know better, you'd think this was a zoned industrial versus general commercial.
Right.
Yep, and so that's the existing building. So just north of that is where they're proposing the new one. So you can see that's just a steel structure itself. Across the street, same deal, steel structure.
You're not going to raise that existing building, are you? That's going to stay?
The existing building will stay, We're just going right to the north side of the existing.
So their design, it actually conforms to what's already there, even though it's zone GC.
It does.
Yeah, as far as what's on the ground.
So it's not really out of
and perhaps the reason for the general commercial is some days somebody may have thought or want just to really change the way the area is, and so over time, maybe that was the intent. I couldn't tell you. I don't know when the zoning was put into place.
Well, from what I can see here
So-
too, I mean, this building here is actually going to be aesthetically and cosmetically, it's going to be an enhancement from what's in the area right
yeah,
now.
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, right. So,
I mean, if everything in here met the criteria for general commercial, and I'd say this would be out of character, but it
Exactly.
fits. I mean, it's not out of character.
no, like I said, if anything, it's a step
will-
above. So.
Yeah. I mean, you're going down, you've got the one building that looks like concrete, and the rest all look metal or wood.
Yeah. Huh.
And that's where the planning commission gets to use more discretion than staff does, so we're just looking, it's my opinion that it doesn't meet the letter, but the letter does allow the planning commission to use discretion, and so it would just be up to you to determine if you feel it's appropriate.
Well, as it, I'm sorry.
So since the existing buildings don't meet the way that it is now, were they built before these requirements? Okay.
Yeah, most of these structures predate some of these updated
Got it.
architectural requirements.
Given the street and the neighborhood, and it conforms with it, I don't have a problem with it. If it were downtown somewhere, and
Yeah, that'd be different.
it-
Yeah, but
it fits.
given the drawing that we have, and I mean, this is going to. I'm assuming this is a fairly accurate rendition of what you're going to end
Exactly.
up seeing. Okay. Yeah, like Commissioner Bullock stated, I mean, if anything, it's a couple of steps above what's out there right now, and I don't have any issue or problem with this at all. So leaving it as is. So
So if we approve this, then how do we assure this is what he builds?
Well,
I mean,
I
it goes through the
suppose-
building permit process, but if we approve it, then he could take away some of the stuff, couldn't he?
I think with the motion stating that it would be as presented or substantially similar, and then as staff, as we go through the building permit process, if we notice a change that's probably even minor, but certainly significant from this, then we would bring it back to you for that. But it's probably, you probably submit for a building permit tomorrow if this is good to go, and then probably not going to spend
I'd
the
say
time
the
to
only,
change it.
the only change that I can foresee that I'm going to make, which is even going to enhance it even more, is we're going to run the block all the way down to 2 foot. That drawing is showing a 2-foot concrete wall,
Yeah.
and then it's showing the CMU. We're actually going to take the CMU all the way to finished floor instead of the 2-foot stem wall. So since we're going to do the CMU anyway, we'll take it all the way down. So the CMU will be down to floor level, so it won't have the concrete foundation. It'll be CMU basically 7 feet high, and then we'll have our metal from there up, the 2 different colors of metal.
What's the square footage of this building?
Square footage of the building?
Yeah.
How big is it?
Let's see,
What's
we
pretty
were
size? Are those 30-foot bay depths?
25-foot base. We were actually 125 by
Oh, okay.
125 by 50 was the size of the building.
so big.
Oh, less than 10.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Well,
I like it.
I like it too.
Take a motion.
yeah.
I move that we recommend approval for the commercial building for Roger Green Construction, representing Custom Fence, at 293 North and 650 West in the general commercial.
Second.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
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 I guess
Thank you.
I should
Thank
say
you.
that maybe in the motion that we wanted to, the actual building to closely match the representation that we've been given tonight, right?
That's what your motion will say when the minutes come out.
Fabulous.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
She's already done
We'll
it.
hold them to it.
It's already
Yeah.
there.
Thanks for making us look good, Anne Marie.
Yeah,
Always does.
Yeah.
thank you. Okay, we'll do a call to the public. We haven't heard from one gentleman back there. Would you like to? Oh, I didn't.
No, you're good.
I don't have to.
No.
Unless- Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
We've been here since 1987,
Yeah.
Oh,
and time to get some upgrading, decided to be in Kaysville.
Good.
Great.
Thank you.
My recollection, and that, when we first moved in there, that was heavy
That makes sense.
Well, you've done a nice job. Thank you. That'll look good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any reports?
I don't have anything personally. I think we're just still on normal schedule for 2 weeks from today, which I believe is the 22nd.
Second. All right.
So unless there's something from the commission.
Nope. Go ahead, Tom.
Sounds good.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion that we adjourn.
I was going to make that motion.
Everyone made it. Good to see you, Dennis.